Hey folks, welcome to Car Deals FYI. And today we're going to be looking at the best and worst exotic cars to lease. I'm going to walk you through the 5 worst exotic cars you can lease and the 5 best exotic cars that you can lease. To measure this, we're using a simple metric. It's the ratio of the lease payment, including the down payment rolled into that lease payment, divided by the MSRP of the vehicle. And so I'll walk you through the 5 worst and the 5 best. And then at the end, I'll give you some overall commentary on where I think the best deals can really be found. And by the way, all of this data is available on our website, cardeals.fyi, where we track every lease deal across the entire country. And that's how we calculated these numbers. All right, so starting off with the 5 worst exotic vehicles that you can lease currently. Number 5 is the McLaren GT with a payment to MSRP ratio of 1.3%. It has an average all-in monthly payment of $3,127 and an average MSRP of $250,000. I'm honestly surprised to see a McLaren up here. Usually they're actually better deals. Next up in 4th place is the Lamborghini Urus with a 1.3% payment to MSRP ratio. And that's an average payment of 4.5K per month and an average MSRP of $343,000. This one is less surprising. The Lamborghini Urus is a very in-demand vehicle. In 3rd place is the Aston Martin Vantage with a ratio of 1.32%, an average monthly of $3,200 and an average MSRP of $250,000. This one is also a bit surprising, but I'll explain at the end why this kind of makes sense. And in 2nd place, we have the Bentley Continental GT with a ratio of 1.33%. That's $4,800 per month and $393,000 average MSRP. And in 1st place, the worst exotic lease deal currently available is the Bentley Flying Spur with an average MSRP ratio of 1.41%, an average monthly payment of over $5,000 and an average MSRP of $391K. All right, now let's look at the 5 best exotic lease deals currently available. Number 5 is the Aston Martin DBX with a ratio of 1.18%. That's a $2,200 a month average payment and an average MSRP of $297,000. In 4th, we have the Rolls-Royce Spectre with an average ratio of 1.17%. The monthly payment is over 6K and the average MSRP is $530,000. In 3rd, we have the Rolls-Royce Ghost with an average payment to MSRP ratio of 1.13%. Again, just below 6K monthly payment and just below 500K MSRP. In 2nd place, we have the McLaren Artura with a payment to MSRP ratio of 1.08%, an average monthly payment of $3,400 and an average MSRP of $309,000. And in 1st place, the best exotic vehicle lease deal currently available is the Aston Martin DB12 with an average payment to MSRP ratio of just 1.01%, which is right on the money of the 1% rule that usually is used to determine whether a lease is a good deal or not. And that's an average monthly payment of $3,700 divided by an average MSRP of 334K. All right, so now we've looked at the raw numbers. Let's talk about what's really going on here. Let's start by talking about some of the worst deals. And really the most surprising ones in that list are the Aston Martin Vantage and the McLaren GT. Let's talk about the Aston Martin Vantage first. So although that payment to MSRP ratio is high at 1.3%, what's not factored in here is the lease term, the absolute payment, and the down payment. And what I mean by absolute payment is just like the actual cost, not the relative cost. And the reason why I say that is a lot of those leases were actually shorter leases, like 24 months or even 12 months in some cases on the Aston Martin Vantage. And while the average payment is $3,200 across, all the deals in our database, there are many available for an all-in payment of closer to $2,500 per month. So I think even though it ranked badly according to, the metric we used, I think the Aston Martin Vanquish is actually one of the better deals currently available when it comes to leasing an exotic vehicle. Next, let's talk about the McLaren GT. This one is kind of the same story as the Vantage. They both have around the MSRP, so they're kind of the entry level for their respective brands. And they both have similar all-in average monthly payments, $3,127 for the McLaren GT. But again, those are often shorter lease terms. And in absolute terms as well, these are lower payments than a lot of the other vehicles that we talked about in this video. So from a holistic perspective, the McLaren GT is actually not a terrible deal to get your hands on an exotic. And now let's talk about some of the best deals in this list. And really, I just want to focus on the Rolls-Royce Ghost and the Rolls-Royce Spectre. I think the DBX, the McLaren Artura, and the DB12 are actually some of the best deals, so it makes sense they ranked where they did in this list. But the Spectre and the Ghost truthfully should not be ranked where they are. It's because some fuzzy logic is going on with some of the numbers that are factored into these deals. So for the Ghost, its average monthly payment is around 6K and average MSRP is 500K. But what was not factored in there is that some of those leases are 51 months long and require a 50K down payment. So in other words, the dealer is kind of playing with, the variables that go into the lease to get a better lease payment. But 51 months is kind of an excessively long amount of time, especially for an exotic where maintenance is quite expensive. So just goes to show there's some limits to, how good of a metric this actually is. But at the end of the day, I think it's helpful for getting, an overall apples to apples somewhat comparison, across all these different vehicles. Follow us for more content like this. And again, you can see all of this data for yourself on our website, cardeals.fyi.